Hello, I'm Olga Ramirez, and today we'll be learning about people and women with disabilities in different countries. Later on in the show, we'll be joined by my very good friend, Jordan McCarley. She'll be asking me some interesting questions about this topic, so stay tuned. So, in the world today, there's a lot of issues that need to be solved. Many usually don't think of this topic when they think of world issues. In the world, there's a large growing number of people with disabilities. They estimate at least 500 million. 1 out of 10 people are disabled physically, mentally, or have a sensory impairment. Sadly, it's estimated that 350 million disabled people living in the areas where the services they need are not available. Disabled people are exposed to physical, cultural, and social barriers which handicaps their lives. In developing countries, families that have a child with a disability places heavy demands on the very limited resources on the family. This is why families then struggle with poverty and why it's more likely for families who have a disability are struggling. In developing countries, persons with disabilities usually remain invisible to others. This is because people don't take into account the new data and just are neglected. 15% of the world's population are disabled. 80% of the disabled people live in isolated rural areas in developing countries. 50% of the population could be affected by the disability. Disabled people often live in poverty. They often live in areas where medical and other services are scarce or there's no service to give. In many countries, resources are not sufficient to detect or prevent disability. People with disabilities in India are forced to be put into mental hospitals and institutions. Persons with disability is an issue in the world, including India. It's an issue because of their mistreatment, and the people who don't have a disability don't understand how to properly care for people with a disability. The people who are forced to be put into these hospitals face such bad sanitation issues, physical and sexual abuse, and go through treatments that they do not volunteer for. The women are thrown in these institutions by family members and police. The Indian government is failing on providing appropriate services for them, with some faculties overcrowding and bad hygiene are big issues. Only 2.21% of the Indian population has a disability. 1.5 million people have an intellectual disability. 722,826 people have a psychosocial disability. 6 to 7% of the population has a psychosocial disability alone. Only 0.6% of India's health budget goes to mental health. There are 43 state-run mental hospitals, 3 psychiatrists, and 0.47 psychologists per million people in India. People think that women who have intellectual and psychological disabilities are weak and unable to make their decisions for themselves. Going along with that, the abuses in the institution are from neglection, physical and verbal abuse, and involuntary treatment. The conditions at these institutions are terrible. They struggle with unsanitary conditions, terrible treatment, and violence. 4 of the government institutions were overloaded and lacked adequate sanitation. There was an institution that had just under 900 people, which is way more than their capacity. There were 25 working toilets for all of those patients. This institution would not provide medicated shampoo for their lice, only got soap once a week, no towels, no toothbrush, and they have to stay naked for however long their laundry takes. On top of not being given sanitary options, they weren't being given the right opportunities to access education. I believe that we should try and help these countries that don't have many resources or access to different things, such as medical help. We could offer them a whole bunch. Instead of isolating their people, they should pay attention and treat them like everyone else. It sounds like they treat them so poorly and like it's their own fault that they are disabled. These people need attention and care, and I think countries should help each other out in that. There could be offered different services a couple times a year or so. To help this epidemic, I believe we all have to come to one and volunteer and help those who need it. Now, for a quick break, I just wanted to let you all know about this great organization called 1% for Humanity. It provides a simple way to fund various extreme poverty alleviation efforts through multiple highly rated humanitarian organizations focused on the world's most severely affected communities. Check it out. Thanks! Now we're back and joined by my very special guest, Jordan. Hi, Jordan. How's it going?
Good. Glad to be on the show today.
Glad to have you. All right, so moving on with the questions.
What issues do the people that are forced into the hospitals in India face?
Great question. They face such bad sanitation issues, physical and sexual abuse, and go through treatments that they do not volunteer for. Usually, the patients are just thrown in there by their own families or even their own government. Sadly, nothing really seems like it's their own choice.
What percentage of the world's population are disabled, and what percentage of disabled people live in isolated rural areas? What are their living conditions like?
Another great question. 15% of the world's population are disabled. 80% of the disabled people live in isolated rural areas and developing countries. They usually live in areas where medical and other services aren't able to be given or barely there. So basically, their living conditions aren't the best.
Thanks for answering my questions, Olga. I had a great time, and now I know more than I ever did.
You're welcome. Had a great time. Come again. That's all for today, guys. Come around again next time for another interesting topic. Thank you.